Welcome to the Limitless Being podcast. I am Danielle Sharkey, your host, here to be a guide on this journey of life. This is a space cultivated with the intentions of connection, vulnerability, spirituality, limitless knowledge, explorative conversations, and unlimited potential. I am here to spread love while activating freedom within the collective consciousness. I'm a digital nomad, an entrepreneur, and a magnetic spiritual being here to help you activate your power so that you can cultivate the life of your dreams. This container I have created is a safe space for us all to have conversations which lead us toward liberation, acceptance, and radical love of yourself. If you have found this podcast, it is by no accident. You have been guided here because there's a part of you who's ready to stop making excuses and live the life you've imagined. So join me and my guests here every Thursday. Can I ask you though, how you were feeling like in this moment when you started, because you're pretty perceptive. I feel like you started to realize pretty early on, like, maybe this isn't going to be what I thought. How are you feeling? Or were you just kind of like, I need to get through it, experience it all until the end?
I was starting to feel a little bit like, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. But I'm here. I'm not going to I'm just going to see it out to its end and just understand that there's always something to learn, and there's medicine in everything, even if it's not the thing that we thought it was going to be. And so that's kind of where I was at. It's just an observation, and I came down to learn. Did I come down for some healing, some medicine? Yeah, but mostly I came down to learn. And that's kind of where I was at with that. But at the same time, kind of like a little bit like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. But back to Willie's Retreat Center. And so we get into these bungalows, and I'm sharing a bungalow with another guy that I met. I actually can't remember his name. I'll call him Sean. And I'm starting to do some economic math in my head, right? Because I know what I paid for this trip. And I bought my own plane ticket and paid for my first night in the hotel in Iquitos, which was part of the deal. But it was supposed to be everything after we got into the boat down the Amazon was part of I think it was like $3,000 that I paid that I guess went to Ned. And Adrian has gone down to an ayahuasca center in Costa Rica that is, very well done and very, kind of almost affluent. And, she had a nice room and blah, 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 blah. And I walk into this shack on stilts, with like these weird mattresses and I was just like, I'm starting to think like, because I also spent a night in Iquitos, and we went around shopping a little bit, and we went out to eat. And so I'm looking at the exchange rate here. I'm looking at how far my money goes. Like, we went to a restaurant. It was probably the most expensive restaurant in Iquitos on like this rooftop. And I ordered like this big plate of different meats. And we had all these appetizers, banana chips, and blah, 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 blah. And like, I don't remember what I spent on my plate, but it was nothing comparatively. And then even in the medicine shop of like, what I'm doing the math of what the prices are here. And then I'm going to Willie's Retreat Center and I'm looking at the accommodations and I'm like, where's this money going? Right. And I'm starting to wonder, I'm like, how much of this is Ned keeping? Because whatever he's paying Alex, the Peruvian guide, whatever he's giving to Willie, the retreat center, Peruvian. I don't know what these totals are, but it just doesn't make sense. It's not adding up. And we gather, we get on a boat and we go down the river a little ways to an animal preserve, we're on the boat and Ned pulls out like this big bag of psilocybin mushrooms and he's just passing around the boat. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like I said, I party with mushrooms. I party with lots of stuff. But this is again, I'm like, what did I come down here for? I thought I was gonna go like hang out with the tribe and film a documentary on like these medicine ceremonies, and now I'm on a boat with a bunch of Americans,
A mushroom party boat.
on a mushroom party boat, and you know, I like a couple little mushrooms. It wasn't, something
Yeah.
large. And we go to this animal preserve or reserve or sanctuary, they call them. Um, and, you know, now I'm just starting to feel like a tourist. I'm like, I'm in a tour group. This is a tour group. And we ended up going throughout the whole trip. We ended up going through a couple of these animal sanctuaries, and I'm like, well, what's the difference between an animal sanctuary and a zoo? In a sanctuary, to me, a sanctuary is you put a border around some sort of chunk of nature, whether it's a physical fence or just like lines on a map where you can't come in and hunt here or whatever. This is an area of preserved nature,
Reservation, yeah.
right? But nature is allowed to do whatever the fuck it wants, whatever nature's gonna do. It's a zoo when the different types of animals have their own cages and enclosures and are being kept away from each other. So when the parrots actually can't get to the alligators, that's a zoo.
Is that how it was?
Yes, yeah. And so here's another thing where it gets into the marketing and the language that we use is every animal sanctuary that I went to in Peru was a zoo. They were cages with animals. And I'm like, okay,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. Because it's like going on safari, but all the antelope are in one pit and the lions are in a different pit.
Yeah.
No, you're not on safari, you're in a zoo.
Yeah.
It's okay. There's nothing. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with zoos. I'm just saying like this is the methodology. And so we go from the animal sanctuary, the zoo, into kind of into the jungle a little bit, and through a town. We get out of the taxis, and like now we're walking. Oh no! First we go to like this very old big tree, 500 years old, something like that, and um, Alex, the Peruvian guide, he's starting to tell us like these narratives about the area, and he's talking about the lumber trade and the industrialism and the moneyed influences that were in that got kicked out, yada yada yada. And um, Ned stops him. Ned, the white guy from Florida, stops Alex, the Peruvian man who has never left this area in his life, stops him and tells him that he needs to work on his talking points. Um, because it can't be about the lumber trade and the industrialism and the socioeconomic struggle of the area.
In the history.
And the real recent history. He says you've got to make it what the people want is you got to make it about the spirit of the forest and the grandfather tree and the mother of the earth, and that's what the tourists want. And I'm watching him do this, and I'm like, what is going on here? And then Ned starts sitting around, and he's got his like hoppe pipe, his curpe or whatever, and he's blowing stuff up his nose, blowing stuff up other people's nose. It's not hoppe. It's like granulated lachuma or this or that, or I don't even know what it is. And like people are just sitting, and again, like, man, I party. That's cool. Like, you know what? But this is just, I'm just getting kind of this sense of where I'm at and the situation I'm actually in.
Right.
And we go walking on this path, and we're walking down, and we're walking past a couple of domiciles, buildings, little houses. We get to this little town, right? And it's getting close to, getting closer to sunset. And the villagers are out, and then it's the end of the day. According to Ned, a lot of these villagers commute into the city and they work in hotels and shops and things like that. And then they commute back down by boats to their little village. And, the kids are playing soccer, and there's like a volleyball court, and the villagers, they're playing volleyball. And the first thing I notice is Ned like just runs onto the volleyball field and like joins these kids playing soccer and is like kicking their soccer ball around. I'm like, that's kind of a dick move. Like, you didn't ask them. Like, nobody picked you, Ned. Like, fucking up the score here. And then
He
we
just
walk
inserts
into,
himself.
yeah, it started to seem very, I don't know what the right word is, but just inserts himself without seeking consent or permission or whatever like that. I mean,
Kind of
so
like a
maybe I
hierarchy type energy with
started
Ned.
feeling a little like entitled.
Yeah.
And um, and we walk into the town, and I go over, there's like a little shop, and I use some coins that I had to buy like coconuts, because they'll like take cold coconuts and cut off the top and yada yada yada. So at least I'm putting some money into this local economy. um,
Absolutely.
and like the
You
next
thought
thing I
you
noticed,
were. You initially thought that you were, though, correct? Like you thought that this was going to go to the people of the area that I'm going to, but it's actually in Ned's pocket.
it could be. I still don't know. I still
Oh,
don't know
okay.
where that $3,000 that I Venmoed is.
Mm.
But at least I'm buying stuff at the. I'm not going to say at least. I was like, I'm going to go over here. Here's some coins. I'm going to pay you
Mm.
for some things. I'm not going to. One of the things I don't like to do, which I sometimes I think is you're supposed to do, is haggle. Like you're supposed to.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of countries where they say no, you always have to haggle. You're supposed to haggle. I'm like, I hate haggling. Like just okay.
It's
It's
already
maybe
so cheap
right,
for
right.
us.
Like, but yeah. So I'm not going to haggle. So I'm probably overpaying for everything, but that's neither here nor there. And the next thing I noticed that I really kind of like raised an eye at is people in my group are taking like videos and pictures of the villagers and of the villagers' children. Um, and I was
Mhm.
like imagine if you will, there's a lot of these people in this group, they're parents themselves. Imagine you're back in the United States and you take your children to the park and they're playing in the playground and a spaceship lands and creatures with technological and financial power that doesn't even make sense to you walk out and start
Mm.
playing with your children and using their recorders, and they're like, oh, look at the little village, oh, this is great, oh, so special. I'm like, these are humans,
Yeah.
these are people's children, and you're just pulling out your phone and your camera
Like
and
it's a zoo.
like it's a zoo,
Yeah.
like
Like
it's
an
a zoo.
amusement park. But
Yeah,
these are just
yeah. Like
people
the
in
like the
their
same
home.
like the same way when we were at the zoo and you're taking pictures of the parrots and the monkeys. Now you're just recording your vacation on your tour group.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm just and in this mode, like I'm not saying anything. I'm just kind of like I'm there, I'm observing, and passing out some coconuts that I bought. And then we walk down the road and we get to the kind of near the bank, and there's this like three-story building um, that we're all walking into. Uh, and we walk in, and there's like no electricity in the building, and so you walk up. It might have been four stories. You walk up a flight of
Interesting.
stairs to a room, and another flight of stairs to either the rooftop of the room. And it was very dark in there because there's no electricity, so we've all got like our cell phone cameras out or other flashlights, things like that. And we go up to the roof, and there's like a stereo and some chairs and some hammocks, and there's like a view over the Amazon, and it's getting closer to sunset, and it's very beautiful, and everybody's just kind of hanging out, chilling. And I was like, whose building did I just walk into? Like, I didn't ask anybody's permission for this. And this reminds me of what this reminded me when I was in Iraq, because it was very much that feeling. When you're a soldier in the United States Army and you break into a country, you break into Iraq, you invade a country, you
Mm.
occupy buildings. You say you don't ask permission. If any, you don't even say this building is now mine. You just take it, and God forbid anybody tries to stop you.
Mm.
Because that's just a fight waiting to happen. You don't ask permission to go driving down the road. You drive down the road. You're asserting your aggression. You're
Wow.
not there to be polite. You're not there to ask permission. You're not there to say, "Oh, hey, I'd really like to set up a guard tower in this building, but first I need to find out whose building this is. I need to negotiate like a lease agreement." That's not how that happens,
Right.
right? And that's what this reminded me of. I just walked into this building with this group of people. I didn't ask anybody's permission. And I don't know what the ownership because again, I've been in enough countries in the world to know that not every country they have different senses of ownership. It could be a community building, it could be a community center. I asked Ned, I said, hey, whose building is this? What's the sense of ownership like in this country? You come here a lot,
Mhm.
and I know enough to know that not to assume that everybody has a mortgage and a bank and a credit card. There's different ways to assert ownership. And he said that it was a community building, and that during the day there's a lot of trade that happens there, and that could be true, but
Mm.
um, it was just odd to
And
me.
you felt that, like your intuition was telling you something more than your logical mind as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and my experience, and the ways that it seemed familiar to me, from other experiences. And so we hung out here for a little while, and then we left the building and walked down the banks back to Willie's. Um, and so that was my first night there, and um, then the whole idea was we're gonna go down, we're gonna harvest the ayahuasca, we're gonna prepare the ayahuasca, we're gonna look for the combo frogs, we're gonna harvest the combo venom, the frog poison,
Mhm.
um, and it didn't happen the first day. I can't remember. The timeline is getting messed up for me, but that was the other thing, is the schedule kept changing. It kept being like, it wasn't very rigid. It wasn't like, okay,
Mhm.
you're going to do ayahuasca night 1, night 2, you're going to take a break, you're going to do it night 3, and then that's that. It was very kind of wishy-washy
Like
and
an
kind of,
actual retreat would be if this was something that was curated
okay,
professionally, you
yeah.
would have a time and you would follow those times.
Yeah. And so
Mm.
this was just kind of like, we're here, we're hanging out. Oh, what do you feel like doing today? We might get into some ayahuasca. I'm like, but Willie and some of the young males that he had there, and I think some of them were his sons and some of them were just villagers. Um, they went out into the jungle and they harvested a bunch of ayahuasca vine and they brought it in. And there was a morning where like I got to like mash the ayahuasca, and it was like carrying it, putting it in tubs, and they take it back to the maloka, the ceremony room, which was literally just like a small shack on a dirt floor. And I
Mm.
understand, like it's Peru, it's the middle of the Amazon. Um, I don't need there to be like teak wood floors everywhere, although that exists in
Mhm.
other centers.
There are
But
some pretty massive malokas curated by tribes throughout the Amazon as well. Like they really
mm,
take pride in their malokas, but yeah.
that's good to hear. This was not one of them.
Yes.
And Willie's got a big metal pot over a fire, and he's going to brew the ayahuasca for the next 2 or 3 days. And so that's what's going to go on there. And I'm looking around. There's this dirt floor in this very small wooden shack. There's a few like soiled mattresses stacked in the corner. Um,
Oh.
and I'm like, okay. Uh, and then the night and the next day. And this is my first time with combo as well. The frog venom, where they do the burns, the gates, and
Mhm.
then they put that in. But I was not feeling very comfortable, and we were getting close to like doing this combo thing. And I know about combo. I know how it does the vasodilation. It's very
Mhm.
uncomfortable. It's very fast. It's very purgy. It's supposed to have some medicinal benefits. But I'm not too. I wasn't at the time too versed in that. And I was kind of in the moment. I was like, you know what? I'm not really feeling like doing combo. Um, and Ned tried telling me that I had to. I'm like, well, this is what we came here to do. You have to. It's part of the
Mm.
pre ayahuasca cleansing. And I'm like, first of all, don't fucking tell me I have to do something. Like, I'm I remember how we got here. I will walk a couple miles down the banks of the Amazon, and I will just go back to Iquitos. Maybe I'll get eaten by a fucking python. Maybe not. I don't know. But don't tell me. I've always got options.
Yes.
Don't tell
I
me.
think
Don't
that's
put me in the middle of the Amazon.
definitely,
I mean, I have to do
yeah.
something, man. Because if I don't want to do it, I'm not gonna fucking do it. And so there was a conversation in the group about this, and my friend Ryan, he's a doctor, And so he was doing a lot of studying, and so he was able to talk to me about the kind of the Western scientific narrative of combo of the peptides and the cleansing of the da 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 da. And Brian is going to be the one who administers it to me. I'm like, okay, as long as fucking Ned's not getting near me with a knife blade smeared with frog poison, then okay, I'm gonna give this a try. And so I do. It was 3 dots on my arm, and Ryan let me through it. It was very uncomfortable. I don't know that I'll ever do it again. A lot of purging, which I guess I got some cleanse. But that was just another data point here in this uncomfortable situation. And so the ayahuasca is cooking for the next couple of days. And now we get into into part of the documentary, right? The documentary. And again, to me, a documentary is at least an attempt at journalism. And journalism is massively biased these days. It's always got agendas. But at the core of the philosophy of journalism is that it's just a representation of something that exists. It's a who, what, where, and when. And then we get into a why, and the why is when the narrative and the agendas start coming in. Well, why are people doing that? Why are Palestine and Israel still fighting? Or when you get into the why, that's when the agenda comes in. But a documentary is at least at its core an exercise in journalism, and journalism at its core is an exercise in seeking some sort of objective documentation and reporting of just something that has or is happening, right? What a documentary is not is when a guy named Ned from Florida turns on a camera and wants you to sit down and say his company's name and tell the camera about the good time you were having with his company, because Ned has a company. And again, Ned owns property in this area at which he is seeking to turn into a medicine eco-tourism destination. And so the documentary is actually, this is called marketing. This is not a documentary. This is marketing. When you're like, say my company name and say that, and to tell the camera what you're down here for your medicine journey and the healing and how awesome it is. I'm like, this is called testimonial marketing. Again, there's nothing wrong with, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a zoo. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with testimonial marketing, but call a spade a spade. Don't tell me that I'm filming a documentary when what you want me to do is give you marketing content to promote your for-profit business.
Right.
And it starts to be revealed that one of the whole points of the trip for Ned was to court the people on the trip as potential investors. He wants us to invest in his retreat center, which is a little bit, I feel, is why he's kind of showing his cards a little bit, why he's correcting the Peruvian man's talking points, because he thinks he's selling a concept to us. And in my mind, like, again, I'm happy to stay quiet and not really argue, but you're doing the opposite of selling your investments idea, because you're just kind of showing me that you're coming down to this socioeconomically depressed area, swinging your American money around, treating the locals as though they're
subhuman,
subhumans, or, and like, no, I don't want to invest in I don't want to be a part of this, at all. And we get into the ayahuasca night, and I took one serving of ayahuasca in the very crowded room, very small maloca on the dirt floor.
How many people were there with you?
Probably like a dozen.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Maybe a little bit less. Maybe it's closer to 10. But and it was a very small room, and there was not a dozen mattresses, so we're like doubled up. And like small buckets, and Willie is the curandero, and he's passing out or calling people up and giving them the right dose according to his grandfather's spirit guides. And there's a couple of his male assistants in the room, but they're not assistants like there to help you. They're not there to attend to you or check in on you. They're basically just there. If you get up and start to walk towards the door, they're going to open the door. They're going to shine a flashlight on the door and open the door. Um, and so I just wasn't really comfortable in the situation. I had a little bit of an experience with the ayahuasca, a little bit of purging, but and I lost all sense of time, and so I didn't know how long had passed. But I quickly got up and I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to my room. I'm done with this for the night. And it turns out I was in there for maybe like 2 or 3 hours in the local. So it wasn't the all night thing that other people went through, and they did like 2 and 3 servings. Um, and again, getting back to like there wasn't really any assistance. A couple of people just ended up laying in their own like feces and their own like urine because there
Oh my
wasn't
goodness.
there's just people in these journeys by themselves, and and that too, like I don't know. I wasn't gonna take the second cup. I'm like I'm not going deep on this. I don't feel comfortable. I'm just gonna go back to my room. I had my
Yeah.
own little interesting journey outside of the container of the Maloka and Willie singing the songs and things like that, because that can provide a lot of context to what's going on with the DMT and the ayahuasca
Hmm.
itself. And then to go back to my room and just kind of be with my own thoughts, and like that expanded consciousness was very interesting.
Hmm.
Um, so that happened. The next day, we all did like a sharing circle, and people were talking about doing a second night of the ayahuasca. Again, like it's not on the schedule. They're just like, "Hey, what do we want to do today? Want to do more ayahuasca tonight?" I was like, "You guys are welcome to, but I'm not going to. I got my own stuff to process with the first night, and I'm just not feeling called to." And a couple of other people kind of took note, took off of my cue. Like, yeah, not really feeling that as well. And so then we go on a trip down the Amazon. We take a boat down the Amazon. We're going to go visit Ned's property because right now we're on Willie's property because Willie
Hmm.
has the buildings in the retreat center. But now we're going to go see Ned's property, which doesn't have anything on it yet, but he owns the property, and this is where he wants to put where Ned wants to put his tourism destination. Um, and take a boat down the Amazon, and we go to a monkey sanctuary, which is code for a lot of
Monkey
different
zoo.
cages of monkeys. Um, and we go walking into the Amazon down like a trail, and it was like I was glad that from my military experience, I kind of knew what to pack. I knew it was going to be hot and sweltering, but I had like a lot of long sleeves and like loose pants tucked into my boots. A lot of other people were in like shorts and tank tops, and I'm like, you're gonna get chewed the fuck
The
up, like
bugs, yeah.
yeah. And so walking into the jungle down a very narrow path, like having to hack away at stuff, a lot of ants, a lot of mosquitoes, a lot of whatever. I was also the only one who brought a GPS as well. I'm glad that I did that. So I'm
Oh
like,
my
I'm
God.
marking waypoints, and I'm like, okay, here where we walked into the jungle, da 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 da. And one
Hmm.
thing that I noticed on my GPS is the area that we were walking in on my GPS map looks like it's underwater. It's all like underwater, and I know the Amazon. The Amazon swells
Hmm.
in the rainy season, and then it shrinks down in the dry season, and then it swells in the rainy season. So I'm starting to think, I'm like, did Ned buy property in a flood zone that he wants to build a retreat center on? Because I think, like, part of me wants to ask Ned, I'm like, have you been down here in the rainy season? Because
Yeah.
I'm sure the spot we're standing on is probably under several feet of water for half of the year. But I'm just
Hmm.
like, I'll let it go. So we get to this area to Ned's like land, and something that he notices is that there have been a couple of trees cut down. Um, and he starts to become very angry and very incensed because Ned has anointed himself as a protector of the forest. He fancies himself not just a psychedelic psychonaut, but an
Hmm.
environmentalist, a protector of the rainforest. And he's very upset that people have cut down his trees, his hundreds of year old trees that have the grandfather spirit in them. And I'm thinking, okay. And we go out of the jungle and we go to this little town, and we're all hanging out at this other retreat center. There's nobody else there except a couple of staff. There's no other like guests. I don't know,
Hmm.
maybe it's the off season. Um, but Ned starts getting into this fight with the locals, with like the local chief, who I guess he's supposed to be paying to like watch over his property while he's not there, and he's trying to assert that the villagers have cut down his trees and there's something wrong with this. And he sees like stacks of lumber. He's like, this is my lumber. And he's like trying to assert, he even calls it like his gringo wrath. He's like, I'm going to give these people my gringo wrath. And I'm like swinging in a hammock, like watching this guy with a couple other guys, and I made a joke. I'm like, yeah,
What a show.
go get him, Ahab. And the guys next to me got the Moby Dick reference and laughed at it. And somebody else in the group mentioned me for a second. They were like, because they were kind of like, oh yeah, Ned's gonna get him. Like, yeah, they don't know. We got former soldiers here and referencing me. I'm like, yeah, I'm a former soldier. That's why I know not to get into fucking shouting matches over property rights
Right.
10 miles down the Amazon. Like, you could disappear very quickly here. Like,
And nobody will ever find you.
nobody's ever gonna fucking know, man. You're gonna get a shallow grave out in the jungle. So don't think that I'm gonna get your back, because I'll fucking watch them do it. I'm like, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't argue with the fact that you just cut Ned's head off and you were
Right.
dragging him out into. Please don't do it to me. I'm gonna fucking exit out of here. But don't think that I'm gonna be on your team, Ned. And so this again is just like how this individual, this man from Florida, is treating this society. And again, these people are villagers.
Yep.
You know, they're never going to get out. They were born here. They're gonna farm their what they farm, raise what they're gonna raise. They're gonna buy what they can buy with what limited economic resources they have, and then that's gonna be their life. They're gonna have children, and it's just going to perpetuate. It's just going to go on. That's
Right.
what life is in the Amazon village. And to have, again, it's like aliens landing a ship with more money than God, according to you, is going to stand there and assert property rights of how dare you cut down my trees. These people live here, like
Yeah.
they
That's
are
why I
the.
respect your perspective so much, because I see this a lot. I really do. And I try I mean, I'm obviously traveling and I try my absolute best to have awareness. Like, this is not my place, right? Like, I'm being welcomed in. It's so important to respect the cultures, the people. I am not in ownership of any of this. And that's why I really wanted you to highlight this is for people to have an increased level of awareness when they are traveling, when they are trying to go on these excursions into the Amazon. Respect the people that live on the land and do not try to take as much as you are giving, you know? And that's what I see is like this very much like, go to these countries and take what is not yours. And that's why I really wanted you to share this story. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, just kind of getting a sense. And then we went back to Willie's retreat center for one more night. And then for some reason I'm not entirely certain of, I think Ned might have gotten into a fight with Willie over use of funds. I heard an argument over use of funds. And Ned was upset that Willie spent so much of the money that he gave him in improving the property. I said, I didn't know so much was going to go into construction, because another thing, the food was really bad. And I've done dietas or other, and I've read dietas, but then you get to Willie's Retreat Center and you're getting handed plates of pasta with slices of bread and like margarine. I'm like, okay, either the people who are doing that dieta stuff are full of shit, and Willie knows that egg noodles and white bread is a great thing to do before an ayahuasca ceremony, or I don't know what's going on, but there's something off here. And it turns out that like Ned had an issue with how much Willie had spent to improve the property with the money that he gave me, and again, like, improve the property. Okay, I mean, he probably improved his property, but it's not a bungalow at the Marriott.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, like, I don't know how much that Ned is pocketing. And then so that was one of the reasons. Ned had this grand idea that he was going to go put a fence around his property. So he wanted to move all of us from the retreat center which again, like, am I still on a retreat, or now we're just about like you asserting your property rights to the villagers down the river? So we're moving to the other retreat center. We're gonna, and Ned and Alex went into Iquitos and got like spools of barbed wire and like the post diggers and things like that. And there
To
was
be
some.
experiencing this while you're supposed to be on a healing ayahuasca retreat, you sound so calm, and I know it's because of your background. Of course, you've probably been in the craziest
Yeah.
situations that people can't imagine. But for me, in that situation, I would be losing my mind. I'm supposed to be healing here.
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because it's not a rock, you know.
Right. Exactly.
But we're gonna go down to this other place, and Ned's got spools of barbed wire and post diggers, and there's some comments of like us helping him build a fence. And I help you build a fence, and motherfucker, I paid you to be here. Like, I'll supervise. You want me to point and be like, here's how you build a fence, like.
Right.
But no. So we go down to the town that we just came from, where Ned is asserting his property rights over the trees that were cut down on his property, and now we've moved into a different kind of like hotel. This one at least is a little bit seems a little bit more put together. The rooms are much smaller, and I think the beds have bed bugs in them, but like very tiny ones. Because I just started getting chewed up right away, and now we don't have Willie. Like, we have left our Curandero's Willie's retreat center, but people are still talking about doing ayahuasca that night. I mean, who's going to serve the ayahuasca? And it turns out it's going to be Ned. Ned has decided that he is ready to be the curandero, because of course, the grandfather spirit has anointed him such. And I'm like, I'm still not going to do that. And a few of us just sat out for various reasons. Nobody was really arguing. We're just like, no, I just don't feel called to that. You all do it. And there's like this like dining room area that they pushed all the tables back and turned into a little, a little slapped together maloca. And Ned is going to serve everybody ayahuasca, and that's great. I'm going to hang out back here. There was a nice woman in our group who did some acupuncture on me. That was really great. My first time doing acupuncture. Got very relaxed. I can kind of hear, their little ceremony thing going on a little bit. And, I guess everybody survived, like, whatever. But the next day, people were like, yeah, man, that was a really intense journey for me. And I was like, yeah, I mean, was yours intense? Mine was intense too. And I'm like, yeah, you think maybe you think Ned maybe might not be the greatest guy in measuring how much ayahuasca to give you? Is it, wherever Willie learned how to do it, maybe Willie at least has an intuitive sense of how much medicine to serve a 115-pound woman versus a 210-pound man. Blah, 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 blah. Maybe Ned doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, and maybe Ned just gave you a shit ton of fucking jungle vine juice. And so at that point, I was kind of done.
Yeah.
And there was a couple other people that were done, and I was getting chewed up. A couple other people were getting chewed up, and we had talked to Alex, the Peruvian guy, and he said, like, if you guys can come up with $120 in cash, I can get a boat out here and take you back to
out.
Yeah. And at this point, it's like 2 days away from when I was supposed to leave. We were supposed to leave already, so I'm just not going to be here for the last 2 nights.
And
right?
was it a whole 7 days, a whole week, or?
Close to that. It was closer to seven, maybe closer to 10.
Wow.
I have to think about that. And I'm gonna go back to Iquitos. I'm an American. I've got money. So I'm gonna find a hotel, and I'm either going to stay in Iquitos until my already scheduled flight, or I'm gonna change my flight, or I'm just gonna buy a new flight, because I've looked them up and they're like $80. And so I changed my plans. I go back to Iquitos with Alex and a couple of the other guys, 2 other guys on the trip with us. And Alex is going to stay in Iquitos with us and take us around. And so we go back to that restaurant with the big plate of meat that I can afford very easily. And I was still I've abstained from alcohol before, but I got back to drinking alcohol. So I had some drinks. We went out bar hopping, which was interesting to go bar hopping with Alex, because you go into the situation and alcohol is, very verboten or very, not a good idea when you're going to go into ayahuasca.
Mhm.
We're going bar hopping, and we're at a bar, and we start talking to Alex, the Peruvian man, and getting a sense of the problems that Alex is working on. And Ned probably isn't the only American that comes down to Peru and hires Alex as like a local
Right.
tour guide. I don't know how many Neds Alex has, but you get this sense that Alex is really trying to bring in economic resources, tourists, finances for his people, because he understands the situation. He understands the economics of the situation, and the way that the industrial shifts and the market shifts and the lumber trade being shut down has affected his area. And so he's talking to us about this, and how, you can start to tell that Alex really isn't that much of a fan of Ned either. He's just a guy
Mhm.
that hires him. Um, and we find out that, turns out that when we were standing on that property where the trees were cut down, that Ned wasn't even standing on his property. He was standing on village property, which is, of course, perfectly within the villager rights in any sense to
Mhm.
cut down and use those trees, because that's where they live and that's what they use to construct their material, their buildings. So
Mhm.
Ned was lost. Ned wasn't even standing on his property, and the trees that were cut down were not his trees. However you want to define what Ned's trees are, because who knows who Ned actually paid for his property? Was it even a local, or was it some government in Lima, who took $15,000, $50,000,
Mhm.
whatever it is, and said, okay, here's the piece of paper that I'm going to give this American that now says he's got rights to land next to that village, down the Amazon.
Mm.
Um, just an unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
So spent a night in Iquitos, got up the next day, worked on some travel arrangements, and got a flight back to Lima. And here's another amazing part about like the spectrum of this journey. So again, go into Iquitos. Iquitos is very poor. The conditions aren't great. The people are not very healthy. It's very kind of developed nation, third world, whatever you want to call it. And then going down into the depths of the Amazon, into the villages and the village retreat
Right.
center. Then I fly back to Lima, and I take a taxi to a suburb of Lima called Miraflores. Um, and I got a hotel reservation. I spent the next 2 nights on the 27th floor of the JW Marriott in Miraflores, Peru. This is the same country, right? I did not cross a
Yeah.
national border. But I went to Lima, and I went to what I've come to realize is a very affluent suburb of Lima, Miraflores, and I've got the ocean view on the 27th floor of the JW Marriott, and I might as well be in Chicago.
Mhm.
Um, and I've got red wine, I've got steaks, and there's international travelers all over the place, obviously affluent, and they're doing business deals and trade, blah 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 blah. And I right across the street from the JW Marriott is a mall. It's an open air mall, and right on the other end of that is the beach, and then there's the ocean. And
Mm.
so I walk across the street to the mall, and I've got a Ruby Tuesday and an H&M and a Banana Republic, and all of these recognizable brands for clothing and books and restaurants and
Do you
things
know
like
the economy of Lima very well? Like, can the local people of Lima afford that, or is that mostly for?
don't know. Like, I mean,
Mm.
I'm sure some can, but like, what is the percentages?
Right.
Obviously nobody who, you grab a group of people from Iquitos and bring them here, and no, because it's not like, and
Yeah.
because I walk into the Banana Republic there, and it's not Peruvian Banana Republic prices. I'm doing the math. I'm like, this shirt
It's the
is
same.
still $60.
Mhm.
This shirt's going to be $60 in Los Angeles, and it's going to be $60 equivalent in Miraflores, Peru.
Mhm.
Um, and so that was also very interesting, to see the range of the economics, there, and
What a
to
journey.
Yeah. And so spent two nights there, and then got on an early morning cab ride back to the Lima airport and flew back to the United States and just kind of started unpacking it all. Um,
Wow. How was that
and
processing for you? Processing that experience? Because it feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like I think a lot of the time you're in solve it mode, which is, like survival mode. How am I gonna, how am I gonna react to this? How am I gonna be in this situation? And so ultimately you don't really have that time to process until afterwards.
I would say I was in observation mode. Like
Observation.
I never had any fear for my survival, and that's probably
Mm-hmm.
my experience. And like I said, when I go into the jungle, I go into the jungle like I'm going into a military deployment. I had a rucksack with boots and socks and underwear and, fatigues and whatever else that I could carry in. So I
Yeah.
was never really afraid for my survival. I was just in observation mode. I think it was more about like, what am I going to participate in, and where are my boundaries? Where am I going to not just go along with the crowd or the group
Mm.
or the leadership of the group? And when at what point am I just going to say like, no, I don't feel called to that, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And just kind of be an observation, not try to argue. I'm going to try to stop Ned from kicking the kid's soccer ball down the field, but I'm just going to kind of sit back and watch and like take all this in, and it's going to be what it's going to be. So that was
Mm.
kind of, yeah.
The processing of this whole experience, what did you gain from it, and what would you like to offer the listeners who, are looking for this type of environment and could potentially end up in a position like you did?
So it comes back again to marketing, and something that I in my mind during when I was under in the ayahuasca was gringo marketing. I kept thinking gringo marketing because Ned had used the phrase gringo wrath, and so I'm like, and
For
thinking about
what?
Gringo Wrath for
Yeah.
his argument with the villagers. He was going to drop his Gringo Wrath, and so I started thinking like Gringo marketing, and this is an industry. Ecotourism, plant medicine tourism, it's an industry, and the people who are investing in these locations, a lot of them are not indigenous. They're not locals. They are Americans, Canadians, Europeans, from other more affluent cultures, and they come down and they invest. And investors have different motives. And I'm not
Mm.
saying that it's all bad. I have friends who are investors and owners of other Central and South American medicine retreat centers, and I love my friends, and they seem to be good people doing good things. Um, but ask the questions. And this is a challenge both for someone who is thinking about getting into this experience, or someone who is or is thinking about being an entrepreneur in this space. Because for the consumer, what I would invite or challenge is to ask the questions: where's the money going? You know, where is my $2,000, my $3,000, my 5,000 US dollars, which is the fucking average annual income times 10 for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that, but it's probably not far off. Um,
Mm-hmm.
where's that money going? How is it going back into the local communities? And if you are an entrepreneur in this space, if you are a non-indigenous entrepreneur in the space, quote unquote, a colonist, because that's what colonialism is. Um, think about how you're answering those questions, and think about how you are providing those answers to those questions, because that can go into your marketing. When we have informed consumers who are asking these questions, it challenges the entrepreneurs to provide the answers. And the entrepreneurs sometimes will provide lies. They will say, or they'll provide a manicured version. In environmentalism, it's called greenwashing, where I can put sustainable. I can slap the word sustainable on a bottle of water, and I
Mm-hmm.
understand that increases my sales. But if people aren't asking, well, what does that mean? Why did you put that word on that label? Sometimes you find out it's just a word on a label. Like the company isn't actually doing anything for their sustainability. And so there can be this kind of this washing of how is the money actually going into the local economy. But it's a good place to start, right? Ask the questions. And if you're the entrepreneur, if you're the investor, have the answer and be honest with your answers. Say like, 15% of our net profits, our gross revenues go into educational centers and the blah, 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 or into healthcare centers, or, you're hiring people at a certain wage and you're providing this, yada, 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 yada. Have those answers. And if you're going to go, if you're a white guy from Florida or from Sweden or whatever, and you got a bunch of money for some reason and you want to go down there and you want to be one of these entrepreneurs, and because you want to bring this medicine and this healing that can happen and does happen for people, I would challenge you to go there correctly, go there like that, go there and understand that you're not just don't just go there to set up a wall in the jungle, and hire a bunch of people from your home country to come down there and run a center and kind of just create that little island. Think about how you're giving back. Think about what you're investing in. Think about how you are improving the conditions or the outcomes for the local people as part of this offering. And again, just like with the pharmaceuticals, there's a supply side problem and a demand side problem. And challenge the supply side problem to do better, but it starts when the demand side problem does better. And ask questions, and it doesn't give money to the Neds out there. And in post that trip, I've talked to a few of the people that are on that trip who we didn't get into like shit talking or anything like that, but they've decided to say, oh, by the way, I don't talk to Ned anymore. And so if you find yourself in this situation like, do I walk through the Amazon back to the town, or do I just kind of, sit here and assert different boundaries? But once you get out of that situation, ask yourself, like, how am I not going to be in that situation again? How am I, if I feel called to the jungle, if I feel called to ayahuasca, if I feel called to whatever else is offered or available down there, how do I do it from a way that asks those questions, seeks those answers, and at least feels a little bit better about the part that I play and the whole economics of it. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
That's beautiful. I do have a few more questions for you because I am curious about this. What do you think of the rise of the neo-shamanism that we're seeing right now? Like all of these individuals that didn't grow up in a tribe, didn't grow up in an indigenous culture, self-proclaiming themselves through an awakening like Ned, right? I am a shaman. I have permission to give people this medicine without the actual blessing from the tribe and the origin in which it came from.
It's interesting. I'm pretty freedom-loving person at heart. So if somebody wants to anoint themselves a medicine man and make an invitation, then to me, I skew towards, okay, a person can say whatever they want to say, and they can invite you to do whatever you want to do. And if you accept that invitation, as long as everybody's a consenting adult, that's your life. Do what you want to do. It is interesting to think about, and just like with the people in the pharmaceutical industry, I'm sure it's overwhelmingly full of good people who want to do good things. Ned, in his own heart and mind, most likely feels that he's a good person who's doing good things. I just don't agree on certain levels or in certain nuanced ways. And so when I think about the emergence of the neo shamanism and all the plant medicines and the calling back to the indigenous tribes, and I can go to Los Angeles, I can go to Chicago, I can go to Stockholm, and I can have Caucasian people, some of them who've been to the jungle, some of them maybe have not, like serving me these things. I mean, in the medicine shop in Iquitos, I could have gotten I could get bufo, and I'm like, this is a Sonoran desert toad. Like, this comes from this. I am indigenous to the Sonoran desert. Yes. I mean, you're selling bufo in Peru, which must have come from southern Arizona or northern Mexico, most likely. And so there's all this crossover, right? But it's kind of always been that way. I can get the same chili peppers in Mexico than I can in India, and I've been
Yeah.
able to do that for hundreds of years because the trade lines have been open that long. Um, and so, where was I going with that? It's interesting to think about. Definitely try to have some discernment in where you're seeking and who you're seeking it from. And I don't know. I'm not gonna try to talk anybody out of their self-proclaimed, grandfather spirit anointed me the protector of the forest and the curandero of the ayahuasca. Mr. White Guy from Florida. I'm not gonna try to talk anybody out of that, but
But the
it's just
awareness is there. And
awareness there.
yeah, and you obviously know from working with medicines in the past, like everything is energy, and that energy will affect the medicine and who you're serving it to. I believe that. I believe that, without the blessing from the tribe, that will affect how you're serving it and the people that you're serving it to.
Yeah, and there's and I don't and people will in this space will project that they spent time with the tribe and they have gotten that blessing. They did the studying and they did the apprenticeship and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that's various levels of true as well. Everything exists on a spectrum, and
Yeah.
it's not. There's both. It's not necessarily all bad that it's kind of unregulated because I mean, I could go to I could go to a university and get a degree in pharmacy. I can get a doctoral in pharmaceuticals, and that doesn't make me objectively better or wiser than somebody who spent a week in a tribe in northern Mexico
Mm.
serving bufo or some guy from Florida who goes down and does 50 ayahuasca journeys and decides that can now serve it. I don't know, but
Yeah, there's a lot of complexity to it, definitely. And overall, just bringing the awareness to where your money is going and supporting those local communities, where you are going to facilitate or to participate in these facilitations of the medicine is like the big takeaways, right? Anything else you want to offer the listeners with that story?
I don't want it to seem like I've been talking bad about any of the medicines themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I will ever feel called back to ayahuasca or combo. I have my own kind of like I like my medicines to be fun. I think there's medicine and revelry, and so you know I like my
I
medicine.
love
I like to
that.
dance.
Same.
With whether it's a very beautiful maloka or a shack with a dirt floor, if I've got my head in the bucket and I'm sitting on a toilet and I'm just wrenching my guts out, to me, I don't know that I'm going to feel called to that again. But it's been very powerful for so many people that I know, and so I don't want to seem like I don't want to turn people off to exploring that. And I love that it's
Mm-hmm.
becoming more accepted and there's legal pathways and things like that. And I know so many people that have gotten so much out of this. So please don't think that I'm speaking against the medicines themselves, but there's so many options and so many opportunities out there. And,
Yeah.
um, you know, just
Do
kind of,
your research, people. Do your
yeah,
research. Beautiful.
yeah.
Okay, so we're getting to that closing point. There's a few more questions I want to ask you. These are questions that I ask every guest that I have. Number one, what's a project or something you're really excited about right now that you want to share with people listening to these episodes? Because it's going to be two parts.
Okay. A project that I'm excited about right now. I've only started doing some initial work on it, but I have this idea called the Butterfly Effect Project,
Mm.
and it came from this time that I was driving a car back from San Diego. I drove out to San Diego to deliver one of my ice baths, and Adrian and I were driving the car back from San Diego, and it happened to be during the migratory period of the monarch butterfly.
Oh,
And if
beautiful.
you don't know about if for anybody who's not aware of the migration of the monarch butterfly, it's this really amazing migration where the entire species. So this idea that I have that I've circling back to, called the Butterfly Effect Project. And this was born in 2019. Adrian and I drove out an ice bath, one of our first sails, to San Diego, and we were driving the car back from San Diego to Phoenix, and it was during the migratory period of the monarch butterfly. For anybody who isn't aware, the monarch butterfly has this interesting migratory pattern where the entire species spends the entire winter in this one area in Mexico, in the mountains. And so there's like millions of them in the trees. And then as the weather starts to warm, they move up through the United States all the way to Canada, where they spend the summers in Canada, and then they go all the way back down to this one area in Mexico for the winter. And this is just a cycle that happens. And one of the amazing things is this is a transgenerational migration. So because they're insects, they don't live for very long. The butterflies that leave Mexico and actually end up in Canada are like the great, great, great grand butterflies of the ones who left.
Oh, wow.
Like no butterfly goes from start to finish because they're insects. They don't live very long. And then by the time they all come back, it's like 6-7 generations in, right? But we're driving down the highway between San Diego and Phoenix, and I'm just smashing these all over the car. Like, it's got to be like hundreds of them. And I'm thinking about this, and there's no way to avoid it unless I just pull the car over and camp for several days. I couldn't do that, so I just got to drive this car down the road. And I'm thinking, I'm one car on one road, and these butterflies, these beautiful butterflies, are going all the way from Mexico up through the entire United States to Canada, and then back again. Like, what a genocide it must be for these butterflies to like make it through this gauntlet there and back. And I had this idea. The idea was like, well, what if what if we all just slowed down when the butterflies were passing through, and just let the butterflies pass through, right? And I started thinking about this, like how could this become a festival or a community event where people do the best they can to reduce their car usage, to walk, to bike. We could have little events in the park. We could watch the butterflies coming through, and neighbors could get to know each other because we would all want to stay very close together. And we're increasingly separated from our physical neighbors. We're in these digital relationships now. But I was thinking, like, what could be the power of, something that starts as just letting butterflies pass through your area, but how many different little events and festivals and community gatherings could pop up that created different solutions or different cultures, and neighbors meeting neighbors and spending time with each other and sharing meals. And I had this idea in my head of like somewhere, because we are so disconnected from our physical neighbors, somewhere in America, there's somebody whose favorite piece of clothing is torn, and they don't know what to do about it. And they don't know that they're living next door to somebody who loves to sew. Mm-hmm. And who really wishes they had something to sew because, their grandkids aren't visiting anymore, and they don't have the socks to darn, whatever it is. And so the idea is to look for ways to introduce this concept, this idea, to see what kind of traction we can get into small communities, towns, things like that. I think the beauty about it is it wouldn't be like Christmas Day or Valentine's or Memorial Day, because that all happens at the same time in the entire country, especially at Christmas. Mm-hmm. It happens on the same day in all of Christendom. This would be regional, and it would kind of shift with the butterflies. So as the butterflies are coming up from Mexico, so it would only happen on a certain level at a certain time. So the whole country isn't shut down at once, but little spots here and there. Of course, it won't be perfect.
Butterfly
a lot
festivals.
Of people are still going to go away. Yeah. The butterfly effect, and that calls to the butterfly effect being, if a butterfly flaps its wings, it can end up a hurricane or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so where could those seeds and those communities, those connections, those neighbors talking to neighbors and meeting and solving problems, how could that propagate, and how could that, go into the transgenerational value and power of our own culture?
Wow.
And so I've been thinking about that more recently and talking about a lot more recently. So that's something I'm excited to.
That's beautiful because it's so needed. Community is so needed right now. Just like you said, we're so disconnected. So I'm putting in some good energy for that, and I'm excited to see how that unfolds. Last question to put you on the spot for the listeners. If you could say something that would broadcast across the entire world into every single person's mind and plant a seed for positive change, what would it be?
Pause and breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there's so much power in that, and power in the pause, and power in the just taking a breath before we react or speak or respond or engage or pause and breathe.
Beautiful. I agree. Awesome. Jason, tell the listeners where to find your website, your pages, where to connect with you, all of your handles. Drop them now, and I'll put them in the info at the end of the show notes.
Sure. So my Instagram is at Jason_Morozko. That's Morozko. You can find my ice bath company at Morozko Forge, MorozkoForge, and at morozkoforge.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
I don't have a Snapchat. I don't have a TikTok. I don't have a Facebook.
Why not?
You want to talk to me? I'm kind of a technophobe. Like, my ultimate goal is to not use any of them.
Yeah. I agree. Beautiful.
I'm gonna embed myself. I'm gonna go cut trees in the Amazon with the villagers.
That's the end goal of life for you.
Something. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time and your energy. I'm so excited to drop these podcasts in the next few weeks, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you to all of the listeners. If you enjoyed this episode of the Speak Podcast, please like, share, subscribe, send a rating in to the platforms. It really means so much building this community for you guys, and we'll see you next week.